Donald Trump just told the whole world that America has no stronger partner than Saudi Arabia. And he's proving it by basically giving up the whole farm. On his first big foreign trip since being back in the White House, Donald Trump pulled up to Riyadh like he never left. Lavender carpets, Arabian horses, business billionaires were there. I'm talking about Elon Musk. I'm talking about BlackRock's Larry Fink. They were in tow. And Trump himself even put on a purple tie. You know, he usually be doing that red. He usually be doing that blue. But he wanted to match the royal vibe, so he threw on purple. He's a terrible dresser, but that for him is like a step up. Anyway, under all the glitz and glamour, he was doing more than putting on a spectacle. Donald Trump is cutting a 142 billion, that's billion with a B, a 142, let me say it one more time. Donald Trump is cutting a $142 billion arms deal with Mohammed bin Salman. Yes, that is the same Saudi crown prince who had Joe Biden begging at the gas pump. Now, Trump called bin Salman, who we call MBS, if y'all didn't know. Mohammed bin Salman is a Saudi crown prince. He's effectively the heir apparent. He's the person that runs the joint. Anyway, Trump called MBS his friend. And he said he, quote, likes him too much. And then he flexed by lifting decade-old U.S. sanctions on Syria, a move that he said he did at the request of somebody who you wouldn't be expecting to make such a request and have the request heeded. Yep, you guessed it. MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. So what does that mean? It means that Trump just opened the floodgates to Syria's new regime, bragging that this was his dream. Now, forget about Bashar al-Assad's war crimes. Forget about the growing ambiguity about the current leadership structure, but also the certain unsafety of so many Syrian people right now. Trump ain't worried about that. He's worried about cashing oil checks. He's worried about selling AI chips to the Saudis. And he's willing to do all of that while Gaza burns. Now, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is not going to sign the Abraham Accords 2.0 until Israel stops the war and until Palestine has a real shot at statehood. That is the Saudi Arabian position. Apparently, Donald Trump's friendship even has limits. But this is bigger than foreign policy. This is about how Trump's America First hustle is just that. It ain't about American priorities. It's not about American values. If the price is right, Donald Trump will sell out your mama and his own mama too. So I want to talk about this in a couple of ways, and I'm not going to talk long, but I do want to lay out why this is important. I want to lay out why we have to talk about this. All right. First, Donald Trump entered the Middle East and made a speech that, in some people's estimation, is a sign of a welcomed change in U.S. Middle East policy. Now, there is something to be said about the need to change American U.S. policy. I'm sorry, American Middle East policy. The reputation of the United States in the Middle East has been for a long time that we have no permanent allies, that we're untrustworthy, with maybe the exception of Israel. Although these days Netanyahu may feel the same way. But in general, that's the narrative of the United States. The other narrative is that the United States is imperialist, and that the military domination that you see from the U.S. invasion of Iraq, you think about Afghanistan, you think about Syria and devastation there, you think about the U.S. complicity with Israel and its own actions in places like Lebanon or Syria right now, etc. When you see all of that, it's a pretty persuasive argument, right? U.S. doesn't operate. They say U.S. doesn't have permanent friends, just permanent interests. No permanent allies, just permanent interests. And so in light of that, you see the imperial domination, but you also see a kind of cultural imperialism. You also see a kind of cultural, I don't want to say cultural nationalism, but what you see is the imperialist project being advanced through various kinds of appeals to ostensible American values. Let me make it simple, because I don't want to be too academic. I don't want to be too abstract. The West likes to pretend that it is going into the Middle East, and sometimes other places, Latin America, etc., to save them. Right? Gayatri Spivak, the great post-colonial theorist, talked about white men saving brown women from brown men. Like, that's how the U.S. frames its interventions in the global South, right? We're going to go liberate Operation Iraqi Freedom. Oh, we're going to liberate the women. Oh, what about the women in Saudi Arabia or in Iraq or whatever? Like, we're going to save them. We're going to civilize them. The same impulse. So when Donald Trump gives a speech the other day, and he talks about a turn, I gotta say, it wasn't the worst speech Donald Trump's ever given. Again, that was in the details. But what Donald Trump was trying to say, and what he said, I'm going to pull up the exact quote because I don't want to, God forbid, I misquote him. He said that the United States was done, quote, nation building and intervening, comma, that the world's superpower would no longer be, quote, giving you lectures on how to live. He said something else. He said, in the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built. And the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand. He urged the people of the region to chart, quote, your own destinies in your own way. That's a quote that I'm taking from a New York Times piece. Again, Donald Trump said the right thing. He said what I would have hoped he said. He said what needed to be said. Now, the why of it matters. But Donald Trump standing up and saying, we can't just impose our way of life on you. We can't just engage in cultural domination, cultural hegemony. We can't just try to nation build. All true. The question is, why is Donald Trump saying that? Well, one is that he honestly is a non-interventionist. Donald Trump doesn't want to intervene anywhere. The reason him and John Bolton fell out years ago is because Donald Trump is, unlike John Bolton, who's never found a war that he didn't love, Donald Trump don't want to get involved in nothing. War is expensive. War is controversial. Donald Trump doesn't want those problems. He only cares about America. And he only cares about America to the extent that it advances his own interests. So no, he's not being insincere when he says we got to stop doing that. And yes, I agree that there's a way that the moral panics around the Middle East from the West are disturbing, right? Oh my God, the women are so unfree. Oh my God, the children are so unfree. Oh my God, the religious obscurantism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Framing, using this kind of Orientalist lens to examine the Middle East. All of it needs to go. I agree. However, I have no reason to believe that Donald Trump is saying that because he actually wants to stop American imperialism. I don't think he's saying it because he's embracing a kind of Boasian cultural relativism. They ain't doing none of that shit. Donald Trump wants to be able to do business with countries that have terrible human rights records. And now he's going to use the shield of cultural relativism as a way of defending his actions. He's going to say, yes, Saudi Arabia has oppressive actions against women. Not my business. He's going to say the lack of religious freedom and pluralism is not our problem. He's going to say the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. It's been 5 years now since Jamal died. Has it been more? But Jamal Khashoggi it's been 7 years. It'll be 7 years in October. Jamal killed by Saudi Arabian government. An American journalist, Washington Post, killed. Now he can poo-poo all that. He can dismiss all of that. Because we're all making the familiar strange and the strange familiar. We're all ethnographers. We're all cultural relativists. Right? Like, that's going to be. It's a brilliant strategy by Trump's people. It makes them look open and progressive. It makes them look wise. Denouncing decades of American foreign policy in the Middle East is brilliant because it should be denounced. But what is Trump going to replace it with? He's going to replace it with a bunch of arms deals. The Abraham Accords 2.0 is just, these aren't peace treaties. The U.S. Signing a peace treaty. I got you, Jazz LP. And I'm going to turn my microphone up for your beautiful, beloved mama. That's really Dallas's finest. Hey, mama. Hey, mama LP, mama Jazz. 79 years young. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening. United States signing a peace treaty with Morocco makes no sense. Israel signing a peace treaty with Morocco makes no sense. I mean, there haven't been any aggressions. There hasn't been any beef. These are not peace treaties. These are arms deals. Now, the one thing I will give Saudi Arabia, despite all of their issues, most of which have been covered up, concealed thoroughly through Mohammed bin Salman's public relations campaigns in the last 5 years or so. The one thing I'll give them credit for, though, is they still are not willing to sign anything that will further normalize the occupation or the Israeli apartheid state. They're saying Palestinians deserve a state. Let's get to it. In this genocide, let's get to it. Now, I don't trust Saudi Arabia enough to know if there's going to be a backdoor way of managing this deal. But what I know for sure is that it sends the right message to say no. So shout out to Saudi Arabia for that. However, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And Donald Trump has made it his business to intervene on this Middle East question in a way that he didn't have to, but I think will cement his legacy in his mind, right? That he wants to be the person to bring peace to the Middle East. And the fact that he's stepping up saying, look, Netanyahu, this war got to end. Ain't a bad way to start.